Before the story begins, I ask just one thing. Like this video, subscribe if you enjoy unsettling tales, and share in the comments where you're watching from and what time. It's how YouTube knows this story found the right person. Now, shall we begin? My name is Ethan Cole. I am 36 years old. I work as a hospital chaplain at St. Augustine Medical Center, a gray-bricked trauma hospital tucked into the western side of Harrisburg, Pennsylvania. Most people do not notice us unless something has gone terribly wrong in their lives. I wear a black collar, but I am not a priest. Not in the way most people think. My job is not to convert anyone. It is to sit beside the dying, hold their hand when the painkillers are not enough, or recite final blessings when the family has not arrived in time. Sometimes I read scripture. Sometimes I say nothing at all. And sometimes I just listen. The dying have a way of speaking with their eyes more than their lips. They stare. Not at me. Not usually, but at something just behind me. Something over my shoulder. For the past 4 years, I have been collecting those looks. Each one stays with me. Their mouths may fail them, but their gaze always finds the same place. The corner. It is always the same. Room 314, Room 218, ICU Pod 6, even the hospice ward. When I walk in, I already know what they will do. Their bodies, pale and thin as crumpled bed sheets, always turn to the right. Their eyes, yellowed with age or illness, drift toward the farthest corner of the room, the one opposite the door. And they smile. They whisper things like, "He is here," or "You came back," or sometimes just "Thank you." Except I had not said a word yet. It was Sunday night when everything changed. August 11th. I remember the date clearly because it was the same day Father Donnelly passed away. He had been chaplain at this hospital for over 30 years before me. I visited him twice a month at the hospice up in New Cumberland. He had Alzheimer's in the end, but sometimes he would squeeze my hand and ask if I had found the chair yet. I never understood what he meant. Not until now. That Sunday had been quiet. 2 emergency surgeries. 1 on death in ICU. No code blues during my shift. I had my coffee at 11 p.m., strolled the hallway like I usually did, and checked in on the patients who had requested prayer. Most of them were already asleep or pretending to be. It is easier for them when they do not have to talk about what they fear. At 1:45 in the morning, my pager buzzed. Room 412. Requesting chaplain. Code status. Critical. That is all it said. No name. No note. Just the location. I took the stairs. When I arrived, Nurse Lane was already outside the room, holding a clipboard to her chest like a shield. Her eyes were wide, and her voice lowered when she saw me. "You might want to prepare yourself, Ethan," she said. I glanced at the chart. Patient, Gerald Martinez, age 78, diagnosed with stage 4 pancreatic cancer. DNR confirmed, unresponsive for 48 hours. Is he awake? I asked. Not exactly. He started whispering around 1:40. His vitals are crashing. Dr. Park is on her way. He asked for you by name. Did he have family call me in? No. That's the thing. Her voice trailed off. He said you were already in the room. I stepped inside. The overhead lights were dimmed, but not off. The room smelled of antiseptic, fresh bandages, and fading breath. Gerald lay still beneath the thin hospital sheet, his body sunken, skin sallow and stretched across his bones like paper, and his eyes, they were wide open, not looking at me, not at the ceiling, But at the corner, that same damn corner, it sat to the right of his bed, just past the IV stand, where the shadows bled into the wall, a place where light dared not linger, and he was smiling. "You made it," he croaked. I stepped closer, uncertain. He kept staring past me. "You always sit there before I go." I hesitated, then looked behind me. Nothing. Just a chair. Beige. Standard hospital issue. Plastic arms. Vinyl cushion. The kind they use for visitors or families who refuse to go home. "Would you like me to pray with you?" I asked. His eyes flickered for a moment, but his smile did not fade. "Too late. You are already here." I sat beside him anyway. I held his hand, thin and trembling. I read from Psalm 23. He never looked at me, only at the corner. At 2:16 in the morning, his heart monitor flatlined. Back at the nurse's station, I reviewed the vitals. He had started speaking at precisely 1:43, stopped at 2:16. Dr. Park listed time of death as 2:16 a.m. I made the sign of the cross, filled out the Chaplain death certificate, and was halfway through logging the pastoral care note when I noticed something wrong. The digital monitor in room 412 had glitched. It recorded a heat signature in the corner of the room at 2:15, but the patient was in bed, and the door had not opened. There was no staff inside until I arrived. No one, except me, except the figure in the corner. I did not sleep that morning. By the time I drove home, the sun was already brushing the tops of the trees with pale yellow, and my fingers trembled so badly on the steering wheel I nearly ran a red light outside the McDonald's on 6th Street. The figure in the corner, it had shape, density, thermal mass. The hospital monitor recorded it as if it were a person, a real, living, breathing person, but it was not me. I had not entered the room until 2 minutes later. I replayed the footage in my head like a broken hymn, over and over. Gerald Martinez's smile, his eyes locked onto the chair. The way he said, "You always sit there before I go. Before I go. Not when I go. Not after I die. Before." Like he had seen it before. Like it had happened before. And I was just repeating it. I returned to the hospital that evening for my next shift, and I went straight to the nurse's station. Nurse Mara Lane was finishing her notes on a terminal patient in ICU when she saw me. "You look like you've seen a ghost," she said. "I think I did," I replied. She closed her tablet and studied my face. "Room 412. I nodded. "Want to talk about it?" "Yes," I said, "but not here." We went down to the chapel, where the candles flickered low and the stained glass window of St. Augustine cast soft purple light across the pews. I told her everything the way Gerald spoke, as if he had seen me sitting in the corner. The heat signature in the monitor, the timing, the smile. She listened without interrupting. When I finished, she reached into her jacket pocket and pulled out a folded piece of paper. "What is that?" "Something I started keeping 6 months ago," she said. "At first, it was just a hunch, but now," she handed it to me. On it were 7 phrases, written in different colors of ink, different styles of handwriting. Below each line was a date and room number. I read them aloud. "He's already here. Room 218, February 3rd. You came back. Room 314, March 22nd. You're late today. Room 209, April 15th. Don't stand in the light. ICU. Pod 4, May 10th. You were older last time. Room 412. June 17th. Not yet. Not this one. ICU. Pod True, July 4th. You always sit there. Room 412, August 11th. The last one was mine. Where did you get these? I asked. Every time a patient dies, she said. I jot down their last words. If they say any, some are nonsense. Sure. But these felt different. Like they were seeing something I couldn't. Or someone. My hand tightened around the paper. They all looked toward the same corner. Didn't they? I said. Mara nodded slowly. Every single one. We spent the rest of the night reviewing incident reports and nurse logs. Most were uneventful strokes, cardiac arrests, post-surgery complications. But the more we dug, the more we found a pattern. All patients had no family present at the time of death. All passed away between 2 a.m. and 3 a.m. All recorded eye movement or head turn to the far right corner within minutes of expiration. And most disturbingly, 4 of them had requested chaplaincy, even though no request had been submitted by staff or family. They asked for me, by name, even if I had never met them before. Around 3:30 a.m., we found an archived camera clip from May 10th ICU Pod 4. A woman named Linda Warren had died during an overnight observation. Stage 5 kidney failure. The chart said, "Do not resuscitate." Nurse Lane had administered morphine at 2:15 a.m. Linda passed at 2:23 a.m. I opened the video. At 2:18 a.m., she stirred. She opened her eyes, looked to the corner of the room, and whispered, "Don't stand in the light." I paused the frame. There in the right corner was a distortion, barely visible. A bending of shadow and color that looked almost deliberate, like something not caught by the lens. But by the air itself, she sees it. I whispered. Mara leaned closer. So did the others. "Have you told anyone?" She shook her head. Who would believe me? I did not answer. Not yet. By 4 a.m., the hospital quieted again. The fluorescent hallway lights hummed in their usual way. Vents clicked. Elevator chimes dinged softly. Nurses typed. Machines beeped. Everything returned to normal. But I did not. I printed out the list of phrases. I added 2 more that I remembered myself from past deaths. Move the chair back. Room 306, January 11th. He's blocking himself. ICU, Pod 6th, December 22nd. And at the bottom, I wrote one final line. August 14th, it's your turn now. That one had not happened yet, but I had heard it. In a dream I could not remember, from a voice I had never known. But somehow it was coming. I woke up to the phone ringing. Not my cell, not the hospital line. My chaplain's emergency pager phone, the one kept on a separate line for after-hours critical requests. It rarely rang. Most death calls came through the nurse's station or central triage, but this one rang at 1:42 a.m., 2 nights after Gerald Martinez passed away. I sat up in bed, heart pounding. My apartment was pitch dark, and the red LED on the wall clock blinked as if caught in mid-thought. The phone rang again. I answer. Chaplain Cole speaking. A pause. Then a small, delicate voice said, "Room 316. I blinked. "I'm sorry." The voice repeated, a bit slower. "Room 316. Please come quickly." It was a child. Soft, polite, barely above a whisper. It sounded like a boy, maybe 8, maybe 9. His words were clear, but there was something off in the tone. Not robotic, not ghostly, just practice, as if he had said this many times before. "Who is this?" I asked gently. Silence. Are you a patient? Silence. Then, I do not want to die alone again. Click. The line went dead. I stared at the phone in my hand for a full minute before moving. Then I called the hospital's main line, asked to be connected to the night nurse supervisor, and requested information on room 316. The voice on the other end hesitated. Chaplain Cole. Are you sure about the number? Yes. There is no room 316. What? The third floor ends at 312. Maintenance offices take up the rest of the wing, and there is no pediatric unit on site. Closest one is St. Luke, 5 miles away. I thanked her, hung up, and sat motionless in the dark. The air in the room felt thick. My skin itched. I felt the pressure of something just behind me, and I almost looked over my shoulder. But I did not. I arrived at St. Augustine at 2:10 a.m., signed in through the back entrance, and walked to the north wing alone. The hospital felt strange. Not haunted, not hostile, just expectant, like it was waiting for something. When I reached the end of the third floor, I found a row of dusty filing cabinets, a half-open janitor closet, and a door with a faded plaque that read 3FAUX. Not a patient room, not even close. But taped to the door, yellowed and curling at the edges, was a piece of lined notebook paper. I peeled it off. It read, "Do not let him sit in the chair this time. August 14th to 16 a.m. If he sits, it starts over." My blood turned cold. No name, no signature, just the message. I folded the note, placed it in my pocket, and walked away. Back at the nurse's station, Mara Lane met me with a grim expression. "You look like you've seen a ghost," she said again. I think this time, it saw me first. I told her about the phone call. Her hands trembled. "There was a boy," she said softly. "Jacob. I remember the name. 5 years ago. He came in during winter sudden cardiac arrest. They could not save him. I was on shift that night. Room 316. She shook her head. "No, it was room 211. But he asked for me. By name. You did not work here yet." "Exactly." We searched the system records. Jacob Reyes, 9 years old. Died February 12th, 5 years ago. Room 211. Last notes on file. Chaplain requested. Decline. No one available. But in the comments, under unofficial communication, a nurse had written, "Patient kept whispering for Ethan." Repeatedly. Unclear who that is. I had never been to this hospital back then. I did not even live in Harrisburg. So how did he know me? Why was he calling again? And why now? On the back of the note I found on the door, something else was scribbled. A string of numbers. Latitude 40.2636 north. Longitude 76.8867 west. Coordinates. I typed them into my phone. It led to a graveyard outside the city St. Andrews Memorial Park. I checked the weather for August 14th. Rain. Thunderstorms expected. The same weather pattern as the night Gerald died. The same night the phone call came. The same night that had not happened yet. And yet I was already in it. The rain started earlier than forecasted. By 9 in the evening on August 12th, thunder was already rolling low across the valley, and lightning danced behind the black trees beyond the hospital parking lot. The air felt electric charged, not just with static, but with something old and waiting. I parked near the south entrance, sat in my car for a full 10 minutes, and stared at the coordinates written in my notebook. Latitude 40.2636 north. Longitude 76.8867 west. It led to St. Andrews Memorial Park. A graveyard just off the main highway, tucked behind a row of evergreens and a forgotten church with boarded windows. It was the same cemetery where Father Donnelly had been buried, my predecessor. I remembered his funeral. I had only worked under him for 2 months before he retired. A quiet man, gentle, but tired. There were stories that he had stopped giving last rites altogether during his final year, that he had refused to enter certain rooms at night, that he often stared into corners and whispered someone else's name. I never asked him about it. I wish I had. I arrived at the cemetery by 10:15 in the evening. The gate was open. No cars. No lights. Only the sound of wind through the iron fence and the soft hum of rain tapping against my windshield. I stepped out, walked past the rows of headstones, and followed the GPS toward the northeast section. I passed graves dating back to the early 1900s. Soldiers, children, entire families, laid side by side like chapters in a forgotten book. Then I found it. Donnelly, Thomas Edward. Born 1948. Died March 4th, 22. Aged 74 years. His grave was modest, a simple gray stone with the symbol of the cross etched cleanly into the top. But it was not the stone that stopped me. It was the chair. Placed just behind the grave, half buried in the mud, was a hospital visitor's chair. Beige plastic arms, vinyl cushion, legs rusted with age. The exact kind used in room 412, the same chair that had always been in the corner. I stepped closer. Someone had scratched something into the armrest. Crude, jagged, barely legible. It read, "I moved the chair. Now we cannot leave." I stared at it for a long time. Rain dripped from my coat, soaking through my collar, but I did not move. Because I finally understood, I returned to St. Augustine Medical Center before midnight and went straight to the records office. Marlene met me there, carrying 2 mugs of burnt coffee and a USB drive. "I think I found something you need to see," she said. We plugged it into the terminal and opened a folder labeled Chaplain Logs, Archived Donnelly. Inside were audio files. Hundreds, each one labeled by room number and date. Most were short 5 to 10 minutes. Final prayers. Scripture readings. Quiet murmurs of comfort. But 3 stood out. Each file was exactly 16 minutes long, each labeled with the same room, room 6B, each recorded between 2 a.m. and 2:16 a.m. The first was dated July 3rd, 2019. The second, December 1st, 2020. The third, February 11th, 22. Less than a month before Donnelly died, we listened to the final one. It began with the sound of a door opening, footsteps, a chair scraping, then his voice fragile, strained. "This is Chaplain Thomas Donnelly. I am recording this in room 6B. If anyone finds this, please know. I am sorry. I should never have moved the chair." A long pause. "They told me not to sit in it. They said it anchors something. That when we bless the dying, we bless not just their soul, but the shape of the room around them." His breath caught. But I was tired. I moved it once, just once, to see better, to be closer. Another pause. Then, ever since then, they look at me. They see me in places I haven't been. They whisper words I have not spoken. The boy came back last night. Jacob. He stood at the end of the bed and said, "You will be him soon." A faint static filled the speaker. Then a voice not Donnelly's broke through. Childlike. Echoing. Too close to the mic. August 14th, 2:16 a.m. The file cut out. We sat in silence for a long time. Finally, Mara whispered, "Room 6B has been locked since 22. I know. We still have the key." I took the key from the locked archive drawer. A brass tag dangled from it. 6B, Chaplain only, not for patient use. As I held it in my hand, I remembered something else Father Donnelly used to say in his confusion. He would mutter it under his breath while walking the chapel alone. If he sits, it begins again. Not when he sits. Not if I sit. If he, someone else, another Ethan, another me, or the thing in the corner. That night, I did not sleep. I placed the key under my pillow, and at exactly 2:16 a.m., I woke up gasping because I had been sitting in the chair in room 6B, staring into the corner, and something was staring back. On August 13th, I unlocked room 6B for the first time in over 3 years. The brass key clicked with a soft reluctance. Like the door was used to staying closed, it creaked open slowly, as if held in place not by rust or friction, but by memory. The hallway was quiet. No patients were housed on this side of the floor anymore. Budget cuts. Maintenance issues. But everyone knew the truth. Room 6B had a reputation. Some nurses called it the echo chamber. Others just said, "Don't sit down." The lights inside flickered once when I stepped in, then held steady. The room was nearly identical to every other ICU suite in the building bed rails. Monitor arms. A tray table. Blinds half drawn over the window. The air was cold, but not from the AC. It was a stillness, the kind that clings to walls, to skin, to your breath. And there, at the far right corner of the room, sat the chair. Beige. Vinyl. Hospital standard. But unlike the others, this one faced the wall. Completely. Its back turned to the bed, to the door, to everything else in the room, positioned so precisely that its center aligned with a small crack in the corner plaster, as if someone had marked it years ago. I did not move it. Not yet. Instead, I walked the room slowly, observing. On the underside of the tray table, someone had carved a line with a scalpel or maybe a pen. "Do not turn around before 2:16 a.m. Another mark above the sink, behind the soap dispenser. "Blessed be the delay." Then, beneath the window ledge, "You're late again." The words sent a chill across my spine. I sat on the edge of the hospital bed and pulled out the folder Mara had given me. Inside was a single page, handwritten, a map, drawn by Father Donnelly before his death. At the top, in block letters, "Pathway of re-entry cycles start, 2:16 a.m. Below it, a diagram of rooms across multiple floors. Room 211, Room 314, ICU Pod 6, Room 412, each connected by an arrow pointing to Room 6B, and next to it, in red ink, "Sit, but do not finish the prayer." At the bottom of the page was a single word, "Loop." I stared at the map for a long time. Then I stood up and approached the chair. I did not sit. I simply placed my hand on its back and felt the vinyl tremble beneath my palm. Not violently. Not like shaking. More like breathing. The corner wall seemed to shimmer faintly in the periphery of my vision, bending ever so slightly inward, like a doorway half-formed or a scar that never healed right. That was when I heard it. A whisper. From the wall. "He's early this time." I spun around, but the room was empty. The door was still closed, the lights still buzzed, and I was alone, except for the chair, at exactly 2:14 a.m. I sat. The vinyl felt colder than it should have. The back support was stiff, rigid. like it had not been used in years. I stared into the corner, waiting. The crack in the plaster seemed deeper now, like a fissure, like something had pushed from the other side. And then at 2:15 a.m., I saw myself standing in the reflection of the window behind me. But I was not sitting. I was watching a second Ethan, pale, still, dressed in the same chaplain coat, but older. He did not blink. He did not breathe. He only raised one hand and pointed at the chair I was in. Then, slowly, he mouthed the word, "Get up." I stood immediately. The vision vanished. The air returned to normal. The hum of the hospital returned, and the crack in the plaster faded. Back in the hallway, Mara was waiting. She stared at me, worried. "You look like you were gone for days." It was 5 minutes. "No," she said. "You went in at 1:59 a.m. You came out at 2:16 a.m. Exactly." I left room 6B with the kind of headache that presses behind the eyes. Not from stress, not from lack of sleep, from something being out of order. I kept blinking, as if my vision could not settle. The hallway lights seemed too bright, the colors slightly off. Nurses passed me, but their faces felt slow, like film playing at the wrong frame rate. I needed something to anchor me. I went back to the chapel. The small sanctuary was empty. The candles were all out, but I did not light them. I just sat there in silence. For maybe 10 minutes, maybe 30 minutes. I could not tell. That was when Dr. Alicia Park found me. She was still in her scrubs, black bags under her eyes, a folder in her hand. She looked like someone who had seen enough, and she had, "You need to see this," she said. We walked to the admin terminal on the second floor. Alicia logged into the secure internal server, the one only physicians and legal staff had access to. Then she opened 3 files. Each one was hospital surveillance footage. Each one was from a different room. Room 211, Room 412, ICU Pod 6. All recorded on the same night. August 11, all time-stamped between 2:15 a.m. and 2:17 a.m. She played them all simultaneously, and my heart stopped because I was in every single one. In room 211, I stood by the bed of a sleeping patient, my hands folded over a prayer book. In room 412, I was sitting in the visitor chair, head tilted toward the corner. In ICU Pod 6, I was standing at the foot of the bed, watching the monitors beep their last few signals. 3 rooms, 3 angles, 3 versions of me, all at 2:16 a.m. I stepped back from the screen. "This is not possible." Alicia nodded. I ran the timestamps twice. They match. That is not me. I was in room 6B. We checked. There's no footage from room 6B. That camera was disconnected 3 years ago. Your ID badge was scanned at 1:59 a.m. Then again at 2:17 a.m. In between, nothing. Then how? Alicia opened the folder she brought. Inside was a single object, a rosary, black cord, matte crucifix, worn smooth. This was found in room 412, she said, after the patient died. The same one from the Martinez file. Gerald. My throat tightened. "I do not carry a rosary," I said. She looked at me. "You do now." She handed it to me. The moment it touched my palm, I felt a weight, not physical, temporal, as if a memory had just been inserted. I stumbled out into the hallway, gripping the rosary. I kept seeing the footage in my mind, the 3 Ethans, each performing a final rite in silence. The hospital no longer felt like a building. It felt like a system, A loop of rooms and bodies and corners and chairs. A closed circuit, and I was caught inside. But I was not alone, because each version of me had looked into the camera at the same second, 2:16 a.m., and each had done the same thing. They smile, not warmly, not cruelly, just knowingly, like they were ahead of me, like they had done this before. I found Mara Lane in the records room. I saw myself, I told her, in 3 places. She did not look surprised. I found something too, she said. She showed me an old Chaplin's log, printed on faded paper. It listed projected death windows for palliative care patients, time of death estimates, support notes, religious status, room assignments. But at the top was a header I had never seen before. It read, "Do not interfere, fixed point. Ethan Cole, Chaplain, IDO 927. Room assignment. 6B. Timestamp, August 14th, 2:16 a.m. Outcome. Status. Loop active. There was a final line, handwritten in red ink. Blessed be the delay. If he delays, we might have a chance. I looked at the rosary in my hand. The thread was fraying. The crucifix chipped, worn. On the back of it, so small I had to tilt it into the light. Sit facing in. That was all. Sit facing in. Not away. Not toward the patient. Toward the corner. I looked up at Mara. I think I have to go back. She nodded. And then she said, "You will. Because you already did." August 14th arrived like a held breath. The rain started early in the afternoon, a soft, miserable drizzle that soaked the city without sound. By evening, the sky had turned the color of ash, and lightning stitched across the horizon like nerves fraying in slow motion. I spent most of the day walking the chapel, holding the rosary between my fingers, replaying the footage in my mind, over and over. The 3 versions of me at 2:16 a.m., the smiles, the silence, the identical motion. I tried to pray, but the words felt secondhand. I tried to call Father Donnelly's old number out of habit. Disconnected. Mara Lane found me in the chapel around 8 p.m. She did not say anything at first, just stood by the candles with her arms crossed, watching me like she was counting the minutes between breaths. Then, softly, "You do not have to do this." "Yes, I do. You do not know what happens when you delay." I looked down at the rosary. Then I will find out. By 1:45 a.m., I was back on the 4th floor. The hallway was empty. The windows rattled slightly from the wind. Thunder cracked in the distance. The entire hospital felt like it was holding something back, like a surge building behind a dam of flesh and stone and fluorescent light. I unlocked room 6B. The door opened without resistance. Inside, the chair still faced the wall, waiting. I took a deep breath and stepped inside. No monitors were active. No bed occupied. No medical staff had used this room in years. But the air felt thick with presence, like every death that had happened here still lingered in the walls, whispering with their absence. I approached the chair. This time, I did not hesitate. I sat, facing inward, toward the crack in the corner, and I waited. 2:12 a.m. I held the rosary tightly. My pulse slowed. The air pressed inward. I could hear the lights humming above me, and something else beneath that hum. A voice, not speaking, but waiting to speak. 2:14 a.m. The walls began to bend. Not literally, but in the way dreams shift when you realize you are dreaming. The plaster pulsed faintly. The crack in the corner widened like a mouth trying not to open. I began the prayer. though I walk through the valley of the shadow of death. My voice was steady, measured. Every syllable felt like a countdown. I will fear no evil. Then came the second voice, from behind the crack, mimicking me. Not echoing, mimicking. I will fear no evil. It sounded like me. Older. Slower. Almost. Broken. 2:15 and 30 seconds a.m. I gripped the rosary. For you are with me. The crack widened. A hand gray, vein, and shaking began to push through. Fingertips first, then the curve of a wrist. It was my hand. Aged. Desperate. Trying to reach. Your rod and your staff. The second voice rushed ahead. They comfort me. No. Not yet. 2:16 a.m. I closed my mouth. I did not finish the line. I delayed. The prayer halted. The words fractured in my throat. And in that instant, everything snapped. The hand in the wall recoiled, jerking backward as if burned. The crack slammed shut with a sharp, sucking sound. The chair beneath me shook violently, then stopped. The room grew still. For the first time since I entered that place, nothing moved. No shadows. No whispers. No mirrored selves. Just me. I stood. The rosary in my hand was warm, not with heat, but with relief. The kind of warmth you feel after you survive a car crash you did not see coming. I stepped to the window. Outside, the storm was breaking. Rain still fell, but it no longer pressed like a judgment. The sky cracked open just enough to show one star blinking behind the clouds. I walked out into the hallway. Mara was there. She looked at her watch. 2:17 a.m. I nodded. The loop. I think I broke it. She stared at me. Then, quietly, or you just delayed it. The morning after August 14th felt wrong in all the right ways. No page alerts. No code blues. No requests for last rites. For the first time in over a year, the corner was empty. Room 412, Room 211, ICU Pod 6. I visited them all. Each one had always held attention, an invisible pull toward the right rear corner, like gravity bent in that direction. But now, nothing. Just clean white walls and echoing silence. Patients still died. Of course, that part never stopped, but they no longer stared into the corner. Instead, they looked somewhere else, toward the door. Not in fear, not quite hope either. Something between, as if waiting for someone or something to walk in. And it did. The first happened 5 nights after the loop was broken. A woman in room 314, palliative care. Late-stage ALS began mumbling an unfamiliar phrase in her sleep. He's standing outside, the one who waits. Nurses assumed she was hallucinating, but her eyes never left the door. She died peacefully at 2:16 a.m. Her eyes open, smile faint. The second case followed 2 nights later. A cancer patient in ICU Pod 2 whispered, "He's not in the corner anymore. He's at the door." I checked the camera footage. Nothing on screen. But at the exact moment the patient flatlined. The door creaked slightly inward. No one was outside. I returned to room 6B. The chair was still there, facing the wall, unmoved, but now it felt inert. No tremble beneath the vinyl. No breath in the plaster. Only silence. On the wall behind the chair, someone had scrawled something in black marker. Fresh. New. Only 3 words. You delayed him. I sat anyway. I waited. Nothing came. But I felt it. A displacement in the air. Not inside the room, but just beyond the hallway. The boundary had shifted. The corner was no longer the door. The door was now the beginning. Back in my apartment. I checked the Chaplain call log. Nothing unusual. Until I saw it. A missed call from a restricted number. Timestamp, 2:16 a.m. Message. Come quickly. We do not have a corner. We have a door. Location. St. Luke's Hospital. East Campus. Children's Wing. Room 316. The room that does not exist. Again, I froze. Not in fear. In recognition, because the voice on the recording, it was Jacob. The child who called me before I ever worked here. The boy who whispered my name 5 years before I walked these halls. He had moved too. He was no longer inside the hospital. He was waiting outside. I looked at the rosary on my desk. It was glowing faintly. Not with light, but with attention. Like something on the other side could feel me looking. Or maybe it was looking first. I packed a bag, put on my coat, slipped the rosary into my palm, and walked out into the night. The rain had stopped, the sky was clear, and the stars above blinked like distant eyes, waiting for someone to answer. It has been 3 months. 3 months since I delayed the prayer. Since I sat in the chair in room 6B, faced the corner, and refused to finish the words. 3 months since the corners went quiet. But death did not stop. It just shifted. Now, they do not stare into shadows. They wait by the door. They speak less, but when they do, the phrases have changed. No more, he's already here. Now it is, he's almost through. Or, he's waiting for the key. And once, just once from a boy in a pediatric ICU ward in a city I have never been to, I heard, he's you. But he doesn't delay. My name no longer appears on the pastoral staff list. My ID badge still opens every chapel, but the system marks it as unknown chaplain, no affiliation. When I scan into a hospital, the logs leave it blank. When I sign visitor books, the ink fades after a day, but I still get the calls. Not from dispatch, not from nurses, from patients, from children, from voices I should not hear. At 2:16 a.m., I carry the rosary everywhere now. It has changed. The crucifix is smooth as glass. The beads are faintly translucent, like they were carved from frozen bread on the back of the cross. A new engraving has appeared, one I never carved, one no hand ever pressed. It reads, "Delay again." There is a new pattern now. Hospitals that never had chaplains begin requesting one, and when I arrive, the doors are already open. Patients who never had religious affiliations ask to speak to the man who sat backwards. Sometimes, I enter a room and find the chair already facing the door. Sometimes, the door opens by itself at 2:16 a.m. just a crack. Just enough for something to watch or listen. I no longer give last right, not in the way they taught me. I give delays. I break the cycle for one more night. Just enough time for a son to arrive from the airport, for a daughter to whisper goodbye, for an old man to forgive his brother. And then I leave. Before the door opens wider, before the version of me who does not delay steps through, because I know he is there, still waiting, still watching. And every night, before I sleep, if I sleep, I hear the same whisper in the dark. You bought time. Now what will you spend it on?